Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And since we're getting closer and closer to St. Patrick's Day, we are continuing the Leprechaun series with the 1994 film Leprechaun 2. Here's your trivia question for today. What is the name of the guard dog at the go-kart track? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So, our film starts off in the distant past, where we quickly find out that this movie is not connected to the first one, as it is the same leprechaun, but in the first movie he mentions that he's around 600 something, where in this sequence he's already 1,000 years old. Now, during this time, he has a servant named William O'Day, who wants nothing more than to gain his freedom. So the leprechaun makes a deal with William. Since it's his 1000th birthday, he has the ability of gaining a bride, but only if a woman sneezes 3 times and no one says bless you. So the deal is that William makes sure that no one says bless you and he can get his freedom. William, of course, agrees to this, but soon he finds out that the woman in question is actually his daughter. So when she sneezes for the third time, he's actually the one who says bless you. This angers the leprechaun, as now he has to wait another 1,000 years to gain his bride. We then jump ahead to the present day, where we meet a lovely couple named Cody and Bridget. Cody works for a company called Dark Side Tours. They give a tour around all of Los Angeles, showing the haunted and spooky areas, and this company is owned by his uncle, Morty. Now, as luck would have it, Bridget just so happens to be a descendant of William O'Day. Now, to make matters worse, it is now the leprechaun's 2000th birthday, and he's living here in Los Angeles, specifically on the property of Harry Houdini inside of a tree. So the leprechaun goes and attempts to retrieve his bride, ending up in a bit of a scuffle with Cody and Bridget. The leprechaun does manage to kidnap Bridget and escape with her to his home. But Cody has managed to do one thing that is going to cause a big issue for the leprechaun. He has come into the possession of one of his gold coins. So now, will it be Cody who manages to find and rescue Bridget? Or will the leprechaun get his coin back and turn Bridget into his bride? This movie was directed by Rodman Flender. The reason why Mark Jones, who was the director and writer for the first film, didn't come back for this one is because he was now working on his next movie project, Rumpelstiltskin. Leprechaun 1 and 2 were the only ones to actually have a theatrical release, all the way until Leprechaun Origins that came out in 2014. This is the only Leprechaun movie that actually takes place on St. Patrick's Day. Leprechaun 2 at one point had a potential subtitle of One Wedding and Lots of Funerals. Once Jennifer Aniston refused to come back for the sequel, it caused them to completely change what the story was going to be, except for the fact that there was always going to be a bride. Once they settled on this version, the original script was actually quite different, as Bridget, Cody, and Ian had a much larger love triangle, and Ian would have been around much longer in the movie. Also, it would have been one of Bridget's friends that took her home from the go-kart place and would have ended up with Ian's fate. Morty actually became a larger role due to the fact that they reduced Ian's role. They also originally planned for Leprechaun 2 and 3 to be filmed back to back, with Bridget, Cody, and Ian returning. Now, the idea for this was that it was going to be called Trial of the Leprechaun, and Cody would have gotten arrested for the crimes that the leprechaun committed in the last film. There, of course, then would be a trial where Ian would actually claim that Cody did everything and was in fact guilty. Bridget would, of course, try everything possible to help out Cody, including eventually running into a shaman who would find out that the spirit of the leprechaun is inside of Ian. He would then pull the spirit out, and then there would be some body hopping here and there and some shenanigans, but eventually the spirit would end up in Cody, but the shaman would pull the spirit out and send it down to hell. Unfortunately, Cody would somehow get pulled down as well. And while in hell, Cody would make a deal with the leprechaun to return to Earth, and that's how it would apparently have ended. Now, there's a moment in this film where a bunch of dwarves are sitting around a bar chanting at the leprechaun, "One of us." This is actually a reference to the 1932 film Freaks. Siobhan Durkin plays the character of Bridget in this movie. She also played the character of William's daughter in the opening sequence. But Durkin was not the only person up for the role of Bridget. Denise Richards was actually originally offered the role, but she turned it down to be in the movie Tammy and the T-Rex, which is a wild movie. If you ever get a chance to see it, definitely watch it at least once. Heather Langenkamp was also up for the role of Bridget, but she too turned it down to do another movie. Hers I felt was a much better choice, as she was going to do Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Tony Cox is one of the dwarves in the bar dressed up for St. Patrick's Day. What's funny about Tony Cox being in this movie is he was actually in the first one technically, as he was one of Warwick's stunt doubles. Clint Howard also makes a cameo appearance in this film as a tourist. What's funny about this is Scott actually mentions to him that if the tour is too scary, he can just go over there and eat some ice cream. Now, the following year, Clint Howard would appear in the movie Ice Cream Man. This movie takes place in and was filmed in California. The body count for this film is 5. You have William O'Day, whose neck was snapped by telekinesis. You have Ian, who was tricked by an illusion into putting his face into lawnmower blades. You have a barista, whose face was melted by the steam of a cappuccino machine. You have Uncle Morty, who has my favorite fatality from this film, where he got a pot of gold magically placed in his stomach, which was then pulled out by the leprechaun. And finally, you have the security guard at the go kart place, who was run over by a go kart. So, when it comes to the film Leprechaun 2, it really is not a very good movie. It's still got its charm and it's a little bit entertaining, but it doesn't get the nostalgia that the first one did. So, I'm not going to give this one a 3. This is just going to be a 2 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the name of the guard dog at the go kart track? The dog's name is Andretti, and he's named after the race car driver Mario Andretti. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.